Good evening to you and thanks so much for joining Africa News Network First Fast Live. My name is Esidimeni. Gauteng Premier David Makhura has rubbished claims of political pressure to terminate the Life Esidimeni contract as a cost-saving exercise. Makhura says he learned about the marathon project in November 2014 when former Gauteng Health MEC Esidimeni Mahlangu made a representation in the Premier's Budget Council. He says at the time there was no mention of the use of NGOs. Makhura also says he learned about the death of 36 patients in the ill-equipped NGOs after Mahlangu made a representation in a legislature. He says he tried to get an answer from the former MEC and head of department, Dr. Bani Silubano, to no avail. Makhura also slammed the health department for making court representations without his knowledge. The Premier accused the department of misrepresentation. He says he was not told when the department defended the marathon project in court.
So I would like to say, as the head of government in this province, since the start of this process, I have myself followed very closely all the witnesses who have come here, and I know, and I have seen that from the point of view of where you are as families, you have had very little about what happened and why, and a lot of blame shifting. You have had a lot of excuses, but very little about what happened and why. And I know that until you know what happened and why, you will not be able to heal. And I want to repeat that there can be no justice without the truth. So I am here to apologize once more, but to also answer questions about what I knew, and of those things that I knew, what did I do as the head of government in the province. So this is misrepresentation of the Premier in court. Yeah. I can only say is the Department of Health. I can't think of anybody else, because they were the ones who were taking up this matter.
Earlier, Gauteng Finance MEC Barbara Creasy told the hearing that there was never a plan to cut budgets for essential services. This contradicts evidence by a number of officials, including Gauteng Health MEC Esidimeni Mahlangu and Head of Department Dr. Bani Silubane, that the Life Esidimeni contract was terminated as a cost-saving measure. The MEC says the Health Department budget increased over the past few years, and she went on to say financial mismanagement in the department resulted in it being placed under administration. She says this was due to unpaid invoices submitted to the department after services were rendered. The total amount of these invoices was 1.5 billion rand, but the MEC says that this was reduced to 156 million rand in 2015 following the intervention. Creasy says the situation had reoccurred, necessitating another intervention.
In the following year, which is the 16-17 financial year, the overall budget for mental health services was 1.350. So it's up again from the previous year. The adjusted budget is slightly down, it's 1.290, and the actual expenditure is 1.279, and there is an under expenditure of 11 million rand. And I think if you read the Life Esidimeni line, what you can see is that there is a reduction of the Life Esidimeni budget, but there is money going elsewhere. So overall, in terms of mental health services, there was no decrease from the side of provincial government in terms of mental health services.
And joining us live in studio, Lakite Gisho, Transform RSA Deputy President, Jack Bloom, DA spokesperson for Health in Gauteng, joins us on the phone line. Opa Fumba is with the Right to Know campaign as their coordinator, and the lines are open 011-203-5120, 011-203-5120. Mr. Bloom, we'll start with you. Good evening to you. Of course, it seems the blame game is abound and, of course, devoid of the truth as well. I think for the affected families, as the proceedings go ahead, in your view, is this at least helping in the healing process?
Well, I think that we still need to hear the full truth, and it hasn't concluded. In some ways, it's opened some old wounds because some of the witnesses have been very unimpressive. They've lied, they've misled. But I think the more that we hear about it, I think the closer it would help to resolution. The more truth we have, the better it is. But at the end of the day, Justice Moseneke is going to have a report. But I also think that real justice will only happen in the courts. It won't happen here because it's not a court process. This is, an arbitration process. So hopefully it gets to court as soon as possible.
What do you make of the submission by Finance MEC Barbara Creasy saying that essentially there hasn't been a cost-cutting savings and whatever rationale that former health MEC had used to justify the Life Esidimeni tragedy doesn't hold water?
Well, that was astounding, actually, and I think it shows how devious and dishonest former health MEC Kudani Mashlangu has been and her officials. That really there was no budgetary pressure, that in fact there was no reason to cancel this contract for financial reasons, and I think this should be taken into account. I think it was really quite a stunning admission to have been made, and it's very important.
But obviously the blame can't just be squarely on her shoulders. You know, people could have asked questions. For example, Premier David Makura could have wanted details in terms of where the patients are being transferred and not just take her word for it.
Well, yes, that's the point, because people are saying, using ignorance as an excuse, but surely you ask questions. This was in the media all the time. People were reporting on it. It was quite obvious that something was terribly wrong. So I think, to plead ignorance is a poor defense.
All right, Mr. Bloomer, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, DA spokesperson for Health, Jack Bloomer, joining us on his reaction so far with the Life Esidimeni arbitration and the testimony that we saw from Finance MEC Barbara Creasy. I mean, the biggest argument was that there simply wasn't any or adequate funds to take care of the psychiatric patients. We heard today that, in fact, the money was there.
Yes, that's true. But what I understood was that it appears that there was a discussion around the cut-costing measures. But in fact, it was not in relation to the key core health service. But it was really about your credit cards, your luxurious items and all of that. Now what puzzles is there's so much confusion around who to believe, because the MEC Creasy speaks something else, and MEC Mashlangu defends herself, and the HOD also says something different. So does Dr. Manamela. So what is good in all of this is that ultimately the arbitrator will have to decide who tells us the truth and who does not tell us the truth, because we are glad that is a massive experienced judge who understands all of these things. So ultimately the truth has to come out.
All right, so let's get a view from France in Johannesburg. Good evening to you, France, and thanks for calling.
Yes, I'm France, but it's a bit surprising that, okay, even the owner of these patients, after so long, they realize that, they don't have, the place to stay, or they have been transferred to, the place where it wasn't, regulated. But one other thing is that how long do they visited their patients?
Are you saying that the family and loved ones, in caring for their family members, ought to have at least investigated that the places or the NGOs where they are accommodated is well equipped?
Yeah, because according to myself as Franz, I just understand that, okay, if I do have a patient at hospital or wherever, the patient might be, it's my responsibility to visit, that patient regularly and see, the process of healing of that particular patient. But now, after 3 months, the person is only known that, okay, the person is no more staying at the place where he left or she left him. And then that person is no more alive also. After such a long time, how can it be? It shows that
it
even
definitely boggles the mind, Franz. Thanks so much for calling us from Johannesburg. The fact that so much could have happened, all the hurt and the destruction, the tragedy that could have been averted if you just simply followed protocol in checking up on patients, on their progress, or if whether they need further administration.
Yes. That's true, and I think you have also mentioned it a bit in passing when we are saying that. The Premier correctly stated that he was aware about the Esidimeni contract termination. He was quite aware about it. And what one would have expected from him as somebody that cares, but also is the Premier of the province, was really, if this contract is terminated, one would have expected him to want to know what next, just out of curiosity. To say, look, I hear that you terminate. What will happen to these vulnerable people? So that he must be able to then guide them if there is a need for them to be guided. But I think we have really failed our people. And people must just take accountability for all what has happened.
Yeah, and we heard last week with former Health MEC Kutani Mahlango saying that she's a politician. So in terms of decisions being made, the administrators, that being the health practitioners, ought to have ensured that, the NGOs are well equipped, or at least the whereabouts of the patients.
I want to disagree with that view, because if we're an MEC, your responsibility is to give, yes, political strategic direction, but also policy strategic direction. So there is no way that such an important decision in the department can be taken without necessarily clearing it with you first as a political head. And therefore, you have to guide them throughout that process. Yes, we understand that people who are experts in all of that, but ultimately the buck stops with you. They have to come to you and say, this is what we are doing. So you can't be able to say, no, politically, I take responsibility, but in terms of the department, you don't want to take, you have to take responsibility because you give direction to that department.
Kulufelo and Tembisa, thanks for holding. Good evening to you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Well, I think my comment is to say the people, the parents of the people who passed away, I think also on their side they are wrong, because they should participate to check if the patients have been in a good environment. Also, others, they should go and verify the places. Yes, I think that is my comment.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kulufelo. And that's a very sensitive one at this point, especially with the bereaved families, that you don't necessarily want to put that level of blame on them as well. But I think it's in how we treat people with mental illness or, psychiatric patients generally, that the most vulnerable are not necessarily, well taken care of. There's a stigma still around it, in your view.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I just want to respond also with regard to the family. I think there was a time where the family had some altercations with the MEC together with some staff members in relation to really having a serious concern in relation to them having to be moved from Life Esidimeni to these various places. And I think that the reason perhaps was to say, no, perhaps we need to go and check these places first. But my sense is, I think they insisted of continuing with this because it was basically an instruction or directive that says
but from where? We just heard from the Premier saying there was no political pressure and obviously there was no financial constraint. So why would that kind of instruction, or where would it come from?
Yeah, but there was causing measures. And whether it's from whoever, but the problem is people had a problem with regard to the issues of finance and financing this massive 200 and something million per annum. But the point I'm trying to make is to say people should have ensured, but in the main the government should have ensured where they send people, these places should be adequately be places that should be able to really well-equipped for our people. But they didn't do that.
Absolutely. Let's go to Arthur in the Northwest. Good evening to you, Arthur, and thanks for joining us.
Ma'am. Irena, Fatimato was her name, 143.
Yeah, ora go fela neng ba tlo tshwariwa neng.
What a company Matuba.
Yeah, all right, re tekisho a tlhalosa hore e bereka yang arbitration ba tlo tshwariwa or not after this process. Are they going to jail, basically, is the question from the caller.
Okay, my sense is that the arbitration is really a process that seeks to, because firstly, there is the department or the state has conceded liability, meaning that they agree that they were at fault. Now, what is going to happen is that this arbitration is going to take place, but with the sole view of, firstly, ensuring that the redress that needs to go to the relevant people should be just and equitable compensation to them, because they have to know the level of what has happened, how was they affected, and all of those things. But secondly, obviously, the finding must be, yes, they were at fault, just to be able to justify. But with regard to the issues of criminality, I think the arbitrator can be able to recommend that, but the police are there also to ensure that, no, they must be able to pursue this matter in a criminal way, so that they must also be able to then, if necessary, arrest some people with regard to their role. But it's not
given that at the end of this process there will be automatic arrest or even a court process.
No, there can be, because people have died and a number of people have died. The law is quite clear in terms of who is responsible and what has happened, and there is a clear-cut responsibility and guilt that has happened here, and people can be identified. But of course, what needs to happen is for them to investigate as well, and I think there are some police that are already busy with that process as we speak.
All right, Motswake in Beckersford, good evening to you and thanks for joining us. What's your question or comment?
My comment in short is this. I just wanted to advise all public servants, when they employ you with the understanding that you are going to do the work that you are employed for. And there are laws. For instance, in this particular case, the Mental Health Act. And also, as you know, it's a disgrace to me, for Dr. Slivan and for Dr. Manamela. And at one stage, they were indicating that, they were under pressure. If you are an administrator and you know the law and you work according to the law, why do you allow a politician to come in and give you instructions to say, don't work according to the law? This is a disgrace to the whole country. And if all those people, they are doctors, and from my own view, I think they are learned, they are educated. But what kind of, the caliber of that type of people? There is no accountability, there is nothing at all. Every time when they ask questions, they don't want to take responsibility. No, so and so. I delegated this to this. To this one. That one thing. I delegated
totally a culture of impunity. Thank you so much for your call. Cynthia and Durban, good evening to you.
Hello.
Hi.
Good evening.
What's your question or comment, Cynthia?
All right. Well, it's also I know it's all to do with this, which is terribly sad. But I've got a son. He's diagnosed as schizophrenic. So I took him to the Addington Hospital, where the psychiatrist said he needs to be in a placement because he's getting on in life, and I'm also quite elderly. So when the psychiatrist tells you, go to the social worker. The social worker tells you everywhere is full, there's no place. Go to the Durban Mental Centre in Sherwood. They tell you everywhere is full, there's nowhere to place them. So nobody communicates with each other. They just pass you from one place to another, and there's nowhere to put anybody.
Yeah, so
and when
did you manage?
Them, I see they've been killed, and they're dead.
Yeah.
So
but were you able to get some help or support? Where then did you manage to get support from, if at all?
No, I haven't. Nobody can help me. The social workers just tell you blatantly, that's the way it is. There's no place. The psychiatrist tells you they've got to be placed. He gives me a letter, takes to the social worker. She tells me to go to Sherwood. They tell me there's no place. Everybody's urgent. Nothing we can do.
Yeah, Cynthia, thank you for sharing, and I'm really sorry for the hardship that you had to endure. And I mean the pressure on the public healthcare sector, of course, and especially if it's, in this case, psychiatric patients that require even more, specialized skills.
Yeah, but I think that there is a place where she can go and complain. Professor Makhoba is an ombudsman of health. So all these issues can be sent to him for further processing, so that he must be able to ensure that they get the necessary help that they're supposed to get,
Yeah, Cynthia, so if you're still listening, that's the health ombudsman.
Yes.
That you can write to, and hopefully you'll get assistance.
You can just Google, and then you'll find the health ombudsman's numbers, contacts, email, and all of that, and be able to formally complain. I think they will be able to respond.
All right, Lucky, thanks indeed. That's Lucky Tekisho. He is the Transform RSA Deputy President in studio. Jack Bloom, DA spokesperson for Health in Gauteng, on the line, and also you at home. Thank you for taking the trouble to call in. We'll take a quick ad break. We'll see you shortly.